honestly, there's nobody in this world that listened to Five Finger Death Punch and now is listening to Lividity. Welcome to another episode from Takedowns to Breakdowns with A&P, and today we're here to talk about gateway bands. I honestly, I don't want to talk about gateway bands because I don't believe in gateway bands, just like I don't believe in the Sasquatch. It's just that last week on Twitter, I saw a bunch of nerds arguing about gateway bands, and one guy that I don't know, but who's friends with somebody that I do know, that perhaps I wish I didn't know, said that Five Finger Death Punch is one of the greatest gateway bands ever. I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say that, but I'm paraphrasing.
Technically, if you're like, gateway to shitty bands, then yeah.
You know what my response was?
What?
Show me one person who listened to Five Finger Death Punch and now is listening to 𝗙𝗥𝗢𝗪𝗡𝗗𝗏.
Oh fuck.
And I tagged 𝗙𝗥𝗢𝗪𝗡𝗏, by the way. One person. It doesn't exist.
They don't exist.
It just doesn't exist.
People are myths.
It doesn't exist. I don't believe personally, and I want to ask you about this because I kind of got into metal with Sepultura and Slayer, so to me that was really no gateway band. I kind of like cannonball into the heavy side of the pool, if you will.
And what was it for me though?
You start listening to Nirvana, System of a Down, Soundgarden. You kind of got more into the grunge. I would say you tippy toes into the grunge sound, and then from the grunge sound you went into hard rock, new metal.
Yeah.
Like you listen to Korn and whatever.
Metal.
Then power metal, and then from
melodic death metal, and then it slowly. But
if you had to pick a gateway band, is there one gateway? I don't think there is.
I mean, there's no actual one gateway, because I feel like your gateway band could be a band from the genre, and that's your gateway into more bands from
that genre.
Of said genre.
But
yeah.
I don't think there is.
For example, I can't. Okay, well, I can't really say. I was gonna say Winter Sun was more of my main staple gateway into
heavier stuff,
heavier melodic, melodic death metal sound. Because that's the one I can remember farthest back.
Probably them, Children of Bodom, and Insomnia. Because
exactly.
You kind of discover all three at the same time.
It's not just one band.
But to me, they're not necessarily gateway bands. I honestly don't believe that there is such a thing as a gateway band. The same way I don't believe weed is a gateway drug to heavier drugs.
No, it's just a gateway drug to more weed.
Or snacks.
Or snacks.
Yeah. But it's not a gateway to... And I don't believe that there is a band out there that is a gateway. I honestly, there's nobody in this world that listened to Five Finger Death Punch and now is listening to Lividity.
But
there isn't.
I mean, System of a Down is a perfect example.
But to me, they're not a gateway. Okay, so let me come back a little bit.
Okay.
I don't believe in gateway bands. I believe in gateway songs and gateway albums, but not the band with their whole entire discography.
Okay.
No, albums and songs. And I'm going to give you two examples, and then we can perhaps go back into System of a Down and finish off with that. So 2 examples. Gateway album, the Black Album from Metallica. A lot of people got into perhaps a little bit of heavier sound through that record. Maybe they were listening to Guns N' Roses, they were listening to AC/DC, Bon Jovi, whatever. Cinderella, Rat, Poison, you name it. I could keep going on and on, Twisted Sister, whatever.
Yeah.
And then when that album came, that album was so popular, it crossed into popular culture, that I feel that is a record that a lot of people then, after listening to that album,
went to heavier stuff.
Maybe went to heavier stuff.
Maybe started listening to much.
It was so popular. It wasn't super heavy, but it wasn't radio friendly either. I mean, it kind of became radio friendly because it was so out there. It became overly played, right? But to me, that album, if there is such a thing as a gateway album, that is a gateway album in my opinion. Because there was a lot of people that were listening to rock, hard rock music, and that album kind of opened the door to maybe heavier stuff. That album told them that, you know what, there are some heavy metal bands out there that maybe I can listen to, maybe I will like.
Because if I like this, I may like some of the
Exactly, maybe I'll listen to some Megadeth, maybe I'll listen to this, maybe I'll listen to that.
I guess.
So I think the Metallica album, the Black Album specifically,
is a good
I see it as a gateway album. And now let me give you an example of a song, and then I was
going to give you an example of a song. For me, at least, personal experience. Again, System of a Down, Lonely Day. That song, very depressive, very sad tone to it. I feel like from that song, going into like more. I feel like that's what actually got the taste, because I think.
But that song would get you into more System of a Down.
But it also got me more into that sound. That the depressive, tone.
So then you're saying that bands like Catatonia and My Dying Bride
I think
and whatever, it came from the love from that experience of what that sound made you feel?
Even now, like my favorite songs have a depressing feel to them and have a depressive tone. And that song is what started it. Because I think that was one of the first like depressive songs like I've ever listened to.
But I don't think that's a gateway song. It's just it was a gateway to you to an emotion that you were looking for in music.
But so still, it was a gateway to different bands through that one song.
Yeah, but once again, you were not looking. That song didn't make you listen to heavier stuff. It just made you look for music that share that same sort of an emotion behind it.
But a lot of the stuff that still share that emotion
was heavier.
Yeah.
Okay. So fine. I was gonna go with Pantera Walk. I think if there's ever a contest for which song out there is a gateway song, Walk by Pantera. Once again, Pantera is not in my opinion, Pantera is not a gateway band. But that song, it was so popular. I mean, you could not. It was impossible for you in that era that song came out, like in the early 90s, for you to go somewhere and that song not to be played. Like, and for people not to sing it. Like, you would go to a concert and the PA would be playing that track.
Even now
it still plays that track. I feel like that track, Walk by Pantera, it's definitely a gateway song. Because a lot of people heard that song, definitely not their heaviest song, but definitely one of their most popular and most catchiest songs that they've ever released.
And maybe some people who didn't like Pantera's sound before just liked that song, and then went through that song into different...
You could make an argument that Cowboys from Hell was a heavier, grittier album, and then Vulgar Display of Power was a little bit more polished and had a different... It was easier to digest, if you will. And that song was so appealing. It's so hooky. It's so catchy. Yeah. It's not overly heavy, but it has great guitars. So it has all of these elements. And I feel like a lot of people that were not Pantera listeners that listened to that song got into Pantera because of that song, got into Pantera, and then because they got into Pantera, then maybe they got into Machine Head. They got into other bands from that, Soulfly, whatever, bands from that same ground, from that same sound, from that same approach. So I see the Black Album from Metallica, definitely a gateway album, and I see that song as a gateway song. In both cases, I don't think a lot of the fans that use that album or use that song as a gateway, I don't necessarily think that they went back and checked out the discography and liked it. I think they just moved forward from that point on.
From the base of that song or that album.
Of that album. But a band in general, and of all bands, Five Finger Death Punch.
I mean...
Listen, you could say all you want, but bands like Five Finger Death Punch, Spirit Box. Spirit Box is not a gateway. What are they a gateway to? The people who are really into Spirit Box, who really love Spirit Box and their sound and whatever they have to offer, they're not the same people going to a Nails concert.
Yeah.
They're not. Those two audiences don't cross-pollinate. You know what I mean? So the popularity alone, the fact that you're popular
doesn't mean.
And the fact that but I think people confuse that. People look at a band that's popular, that has a sound that's not really heavy, but kind of heavy with some heaviness in it.
Oh, another band that people think are a gateway band, Ghost.
Ooh, I can see Ghost.
I could totally see Ghost as people thinking it's a gateway band.
I can see Ghost. I mean, I don't believe in gateway bands, but if you put a gun to my hand and tell me tell me a gateway band,
Ghost?
I would say Ghost. Yes, I would agree with you 100%. 100%. Maybe not their latest records, but definitely their earlier stuff. The earlier stuff, yes. Maybe not their latest records. The earlier stuff, yes. But if you put a gun to my head, and you ask me for a band, and I don't believe in a gateway band, but if you ask me for one, I would say Ghost. But I still don't think
they're a gateway band.
They're a gateway band but once again, to me, they're a gateway band to other bands that sound
like Ghost.
Yeah, so that make it a gateway band? No, because you're also not moving forward.
You're not moving forward. You're kind of on the same line. That's why I don't see them as a gateway band per se. I see them, if you start with like newer albums and you go down the list, then it's a gateway to their heavier stuff, and heavier I use with quotation marks. But I don't see them fully as a gateway band.
Yeah, I find it hard to really pick one band that you can look at their discography and say that you ask a metalhead who's at a Nails concert now, and you ask him what was the first band that you ever listened to, and they're gonna say Spirit Box or whatever.
I don't see the guy at the Mustache concert asking, "Oh yeah, Five Finger Death Punch, definitely. I started with them." Like, no.
And I'm not. That's not a knock on those bands. I'm just saying that there's no such thing as a gateway band, and more so, those bands are not a gateway band either, because the people who listen to them very rarely
within that genre.
They stay within that genre.
Very rarely they'll move out, but it's like one out of every 10 people.
No, and even if they move out, they're not gonna move out too far. They're gonna go like Spirit Box, and then they'll check out, whatever, like August Burns Red, maybe.
Yeah.
And then they get to August Burns Red, and they're like, oh, I like some of their softer songs, and then their heavier stuff. I'm not comfortable. Yeah, I'm not too much. Stuff. I don't like too much of that growling stuff or this or that, whatever they'll say. Oh, these songs, too much of this, too much of that, and then they kind of come back to it. So I don't know. I just don't see that as to me, that's not even a point of discussion.
Yeah.
To me, there's metalheads who started off with a band. They discover that. I agree with you. I think there is gateways into a genre, and then once you
gateways into certain feelings in your music.
But I would say more into a genre, and then once you're in that genre, certain bands open the doors to other bands, and then what happens is you discover a band that has elements of that genre, but it also has elements of a new genre. Like a heavier genre.
Yeah.
And then, for example, you get into, melodic stuff. So you're listening to Evergrey, is a perfect example. You're listening to Evergrey. And then you discover some of Winter Sun stuff. And you're like, oh, super melodic, but there's some heaviness to it, some symphonic elements. I don't mind the heaviness. I don't mind it,
And then you go straight...
And then from Winter Sun, let's say you're going to Insomnium.
Oh,
I was not saying to Insomnium.
Insomnium and then Wolfheart.
And then you go to Wolfheart. And then from Wolfheart...
You're already balls deep.
But by the time you get to Wolfheart...
You're already balls deep.
Then you start going into heavier and heavier stuff. It just opens the door to heavier stuff. I don't see the band necessarily as a gateway to heavy things. Is a gateway within that genre, but then you have to find a band within that genre that also brings another genre into the mix that then opens the door to that other genre.
Which in the end, there's no certain band that is that band, because it could be any band.
And it could be any band to anybody.
Exactly.
So it's really hard to just pinpoint it to one band, which comes down to my point. I only believe in gateway songs and gateway albums. And to me, the Black Album from Metallica is a perfect example of a gateway album, and Walk by Pantera, perfect example of a gateway song. That's just my humble opinion. But I've never met anybody, once again, that started listening to Five Finger Death Punch and now are balls deep in Sanguisuga Bog. Doesn't happen.
Never happened.
Never happened. And now one can argue that, they didn't go straight from Five Finger Death Punch to Sanguisuga Bog.
But I find it funny that they would go from... I just want to believe that that's where the transaction happened, where they went straight from...
Dude, I just don't see that happening.
The progression. I don't see the storyboard.
If you go to a Five Finger Death Punch concert, the fan base...
It's completely different.
It's completely different from a fan base that would go to, like I said, a Sanguisuga Bog show. So it's very hard to believe that there would be somebody who would start there and somehow, through the maze of metal and music, find their way all the way up. I'm not saying it's impossible.
No, there's definitely people. But I'm not saying it's...
But two people, it doesn't make that a gateway band.
Exactly.
It doesn't make that a gateway band. They are what they are, but they're not more and they're not less. You know what I mean? It is what it is. But that's all that it is. It is what it is, and that's all that it is. Anyways, I thought it was an interesting discussion on Twitter, because people get really heated about it. You know what I mean? Everybody's like, "No, this is a gateway." I don't know.
Twitter for you.
Fuck, it's not a real thing. All right. Anything else you want to add to this?
No, I think we're good.
You're good?
I'm good.
Is there any other way to go backwards, like a band that's a gateway to going into something softer?
Probably.
Because we always look at gateway in terms of something that gets into something bigger.
Some guys may be into like more of the heavier stuff and totally forgot about the lighter stuff they listened to in the past, and then one of their bands puts out like a nice softer song and it gets them to go back. So it would be just kind of like a going and coming, like a boomerang effect.
Yeah, it's not like you're completely disconnecting from one and moving into another.
No one, when it comes to music, no one starts with heavy stuff. You never. I don't think
Nobody starts with death metal.
no one starts with like that's
Napalm Death.
Napalm Death. Unless you're living in like Finland, then you start with. I feel like you're born and in the hospital they're playing like Wolfheart. Like that's what I believe. So I feel like in every other country, it's like you start with something more like what your family listens to, and then you kind of move on to your own taste.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that transition also has to do your age, where you are, what's happening around you, how pissed off you are.
Yeah.
So you go through different transitions. You go through.
Technically, you are the gateway.
You are, because it's your growth.
Yeah.
As you grow as a person, as you grow as an individual, you look for music that meets that emptiness that you have within you. So as you go through different stages in your life, you're looking for different things that fill in that gap. So sometimes you oscillate. You go from something more melodic to something heavier, then your life changes, you go back to something a little bit more melodic, then you come back to something heavier. Your taste never really completely changes. It's just that what you're experiencing in that moment changes. It kind of oscillates. At least that's how it's been for me. I've moved up and down depending on how I am and how I feel and what's happening around me, the mood that I'm in. My tastes oscillate, and what I'm listening to oscillates. So I think that's more of that than anything else. But gateway bands don't exist. All right, at least that's my take.
That's my take too.
Okay, on that note, guys, let us know your thoughts on gateway bands, gateway albums, gateway songs. Hit us up in the comment section, and we'll see you all at the next video.
See ya. When it comes to music, no one starts with heavy stuff. You never. I don't think
Nobody starts with death metal.
No one starts with like
Napalm Death.
Napalm Death. Unless you're living in like Finland, then you start with. I feel like you're born and in the hospital they're playing like Wolfheart. Like that's what I believe. So I feel like in every other country, it's like you start with something more like what your family listens to, and then you kind of move on to your own taste.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that transition also has to do your age, where you are, what's happening around you, how pissed off you are.
Yeah.
So you go through different transitions. You go through.
Technically, you are the gateway.
You are, because it's your growth.
Yeah.
As you grow as a person, as you grow as an individual, you look for music that meets that emptiness that you have within you. So as you go through different stages in your life, you're looking for different things that fill in that gap. So sometimes you oscillate. You go from something more melodic to something heavier, then your life changes, you go back to something a little bit more melodic, then you come back to something heavier. Your taste never really completely changes. It's just that what you're experiencing in that moment changes. It kind of oscillates. At least that's how it's been for me. I've moved up and down depending on how I am and how I feel and what's happening around me, the mood that I'm in. My tastes oscillate, and what I'm listening to oscillates. So I think that's more of that than anything else. But gateway bands don't exist. All right, at least that's my take.
That's my take too.
Okay, on that note, guys, let us know your thoughts on gateway bands, gateway albums, gateway songs. Hit us up in the comment section, and we'll see you all at the next video.
See ya.